La la la, hey, 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 oh, 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 ay, ay,
Empowered Health, a podcast shedding light on how healing is an inside job. Keys to your inner power and total transformation. Discussing wholeness, wellness, and the effects of the mind on the physical and energetic parts of our being. A podcast to support you, moving from fear and pain into wellness and purpose. Belief, hope, connection, energetic keystones for transformation and inner power. Sacred knowledge that inspires us to look within, to find our own unique path. Empowered Health, release and rewire to become what you truly are, strong, whole, and empowered.
Hi, this is Jane and Shell, your naturopathic doctors, here to inspire you and support you on your journey. Today we have Shaman Sarah back with us, and we're just so excited to see you, Sarah. Welcome.
Thank you so much, ladies. It's so wonderful to share with you again. And I'm excited. The last time we had such amazing conversations. So I'm excited to see where we're going to go today.
Last time we had a great chat about soul retrieval, and today we wanted to have you back, Sarah, to talk about holding sacred space for people who have experienced loss, as well as being an effective caregiver. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here. It's really an honor.
Where do we start? Let's just start with sacred space. And, you know, I've experienced grief. You've experienced grief. We've all experienced it. And just how, you know, being in that space for someone else is so valuable. Just talk to us about that.
Okay. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with guiding you with a little meditation that I often do in my healing space, whether I'm doing shamanic work or intuitive coaching or even meditation. And it's gonna be like the thing that explains what I mean by sacred space more than my words can, and then maybe we can let that guide us into the discussion after that and how we apply that space to caregiving for others or for even for ourselves and holding that space for ourselves. So if you wouldn't mind, and if our listeners wouldn't mind to join me in closing your eyes, I'm just going to begin by guiding you. And so getting comfortable in your chair, making sure that your body is feeling at ease. So as comfortable as you can be in this moment. If you would like to lie down for this, that's totally great too. Just begin to follow your breath as it comes in and as it goes out. There's no need to change. And nothing you need to do. Nothing you need to do, and nowhere else you need to be other than right here and right now. So as you take in a nice, long, slow, deep breath in, maybe bring your shoulders up to your ears. And then as you exhale, relax and release them down, softening and sinking. And as you take your next long, slow, deep breath in, as you exhale, allowing your body to relax, relaxing the muscles in your face, your eyeballs, your cheeks, your jaw. Even letting that tongue fall away from the surface of your palate down to the lower part of your jaw so that there's no clenching or holding. And take another nice, long, slow, deep breath in. And as you exhale, drawing your awareness into your heart center, into that Anahata chakra, that place of love and unconditional love, acceptance. As you continue to breathe, notice how your body is beginning to relax. How your mind is easing. Softening. Melting. And as you rest your awareness in your heart center now, I would ask you to draw into your heart all of those emotions that are a little more challenging for you that you experience. Maybe those things that you push aside or push through. So taking the time now to draw into your heart center emotions that are more challenging: fear, grief, sorrow, frustration, anger. Anything that challenges you, allow yourself to go into those emotions just a little bit more deeply, a little bit more softly climbing into them. So in a sense, what I'm asking you to do is to get a little bit more comfortable with being uncomfortable. Holding sacred space for everything that you are in this moment. All parts of yourself. And as you go more deeply and softly into those challenging emotions, imagine as if you could cradle them, as if you would hold a wee baby or a puppy dog or a kitten, without judgment, without the need to change what is. And just allowing yourself to rest for a moment in the graceful arms of your own loving heart's embrace. And then when you feel ready, taking all the time you need, ever so gently beginning to awaken your awareness in your physical body again. Maybe taking your thumb and massaging gently each fingertip from index towards pinky and back again. Maybe wiggling toes. Maybe taking a nice, long, slow, deep breath in. And I'll just help to seal in the energy of this meditation of acceptance and holding sacred space for ourselves. I'm going to chant Om one time, the hymn of the universe. If you like, you can join me or you can just listen. Taking a nice, long, slow, deep breath in. And when you feel ready, making your way back into this sacred space that we have been sharing. Taking the time as you do so to feel the fullness of your experience, to feel the integration and acceptance of all that you are. And then when you are ready, we'll continue on our journey together.
That felt beautiful, Sarah. Thank you for taking us through that guided meditation.
My absolute pleasure.
What an experience.
Mm-hmm. So, holding sacred space for ourselves is completely fundamental to our own well being and our health. But can you explain to us how to hold sacred space for someone in our life that is going through grief?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I'm going to say maybe this applies to lots of different situations, not just grief, but maybe someone in our life is going through illness, and maybe they're going through terminal diagnosis too. Of course, we know that healing is happens on so many levels. So this idea of sacred space could apply anywhere really. So in the same way that you were holding that space in your heart during the meditation for all that you are, you were looking to not change it, to just be. It's a way of getting in touch with what I believe is our soul piece, right? Once we start to let all the extraneous judgments and thoughts and pressures that we accept or put on ourselves, once we start to move through those and allow ourselves to just be exactly as we are and honor that space, we begin to touch our soul. And the soul has this ability to connect to us in silence through meditation, maybe through prayer or reflection, maybe through laying on the grass in the sun. Those are the moments when our truest self speaks to us in silence. And that's the same way that I would choose to hold space for someone who, for example, is experiencing grief. There's no limitation on grief, right? It doesn't start here and end here. Oh yeah, well, it's been a couple months. Suddenly I got through it. So if allowing sacred space, for example, for ourselves, as personally, I lost my mom to cancer about almost 2.5 years ago now, and I noticed that sometimes I'm still experiencing grief, and so I allow that, because if I hold space in my heart for that grief to exist, then it actually helps me to process it rather than pushing it away and trying to get through it. Or I should have been over that by now, or nobody wants to hear about it. I can't talk about it, right? We, as human beings, we have this really amazing capacity to experience all kinds of emotions at once if we allow that to happen. So we could, in the same moment, be experiencing grief and walk alongside with, some joy or laughter in our day, or some sense of deep connection or fulfillment. And it's all possible, right? You just did that in the meditation. Like everything that you are in this moment it's all okay. It's all part of the journey. And we are all walking ourselves and each other back home, back to source light, back to source, love. So how is it that there isn't room in the world for us to love our grief enough? Or to love, even to love our anger. It sounds kind of funny, but if we're angry and we keep pushing anger away, it gets blocked and locked up in the body. So if we actually recognize it with love, I'm not saying like I love to get angry, but recognize it with love. Oh, this too has a purpose. It's making me stand up and take notice, and maybe I have an opportunity to recognize, maybe where I'm making judgment, or where there are attachments, or where I wasn't happy because the story wasn't going the way I thought it should go. It gives us an opportunity for growth.
Definitely. And you brought up a really good point, Sarah, with your mom passing 2.5 years ago. A lot of people think that, grief should have a time limit. And we as a society, at a certain point don't want to hear about it, don't want to support it. And people end up kind of bottling up their grief and journeying on their own, which is not holding sacred space for each other.
Right. I really believe that. I think that at least our westernized societies, we have an expectation of people to pass over, the limitation, that, as you're saying, the time limitation on experiencing grief. So I did experience that myself with when my mom passed. Is in the first few weeks, there were lots of friends. Oh, how are you? How are you doing? Oh, it must be hard. And then at about 6 weeks, only a few of the really sensitive ones would do that. And then at about 3 months, it would come up occasionally that someone would remember to ask how I am. And, I certainly probably, except for my loving husband, who was wonderful, but I would say in the first, year and a half, I was still grieving quite a lot, I would say on a daily basis. And it was hard, because you sort of didn't want to be the broken record saying to people, oh, I'm really suffering because I miss my mom so much, or I'm really having a hard time with this. Who am I without this person in my life? And so you feel kind of guilty reaching out to your friends and loved ones with that same story over and over again, because you think, oh, they don't know what to do with it. They're uncomfortable with it.
What could they do with it, Sarah?
Right. So holding, just like you did in the meditation, holding space. And I'm going to say, how do we hold space? It has to do with our intention. It has to do with the intention or heart that we have. So just like, the shaman has a beautiful view, when we, Shelley, when we pass the talking stick around the circle. And everybody, maybe we're greeting a community and we haven't seen each other for a while. So everyone gets a chance to share whatever's in their heart, and it doesn't matter what it is, good, bad, or ugly. I pass you the stick, you're the speaker. And what am I doing? I'm acting in the view of the shaman. I'm just I'm visualizing, opening up my heart and maybe my hands like a mirror, and I'm just listening. It's, in fact, maybe COVID is teaching us something about this, because everyone now jokes about, because we're meeting in virtual rooms, jokes about these virtual hugs. But that's actually kind of what sacred space is. That is kind of how I hold space for people, is energetically. And so when you can't give your friend a hug in person because they're not in your bubble, maybe you when you reach your arms out, your intention actually is like, oh, I'm giving you the biggest hug in the world right now. And I tell you, people feel it, right? They feel it because your intention and your energy will move in that fashion. And we know that energy is continuous. We have a luminous body outside of our physical body. Everything in the universe is made up of atoms and molecules, and they all dance and vibrate together. If you have hot air at one end of the room and cold air at the other end of the room, eventually all those atoms all start, connecting and end up with, warm air. Transmission of our intention is as pure as that. So if I intend to hold sacred space, I stop worrying about trying to fix them. I stop worrying about, do I know the right thing to say? I even stop worrying about, do I have anything to say? All I do is I hold space, so I might ask them to tell me more about how they feel. I might listen and say, that must be very hard, right? I'm here for you. What else do you feel? And I'm visualizing holding that space with my big arms around them as they speak. I'm just holding that space without judgment, without expectation, and certainly without the need to fix them, which is what we often do, right? When we're uncomfortable.
Yeah, we immediately want to have the answer. The most difficult patients I've even had, they're going through some really deep grief or something really awful has happened, and it immediately makes you wonder if you can handle it. But just to say, I don't have to have the answers. All I have to do is walk beside them for a period of time and be there, completely be there.
Absolutely. And we're not meant to have all the answers. We really are not, right? Even the three of us working in a healing capacity, I always think of, I think it's Rumi, the 14th century poet. I wish I could quote it directly because I don't remember the clear quote, but something like, let me be the hollow bamboo, let me be the flute through which the Christ breath blows, something like that. It's really beautiful. The idea that we're a hollow bamboo. We're allowing the energy of the universe to move through us, and in also being a hollow bamboo, we're holding that space. So when my mom was ill, I was going day after day to the hospital. In the end, she was hospitalized, I think, close to 6 months, and traveling back and forth between two hospitals, one where she was getting repeated surgeries and the other that was sort of doing the recovery care. And so, while it relaxed me to go in and fuss with her clothes and, bring the laundry home, bring the laundry back, clean it all up, lay out something for her, pajamas for her for the next day, make sure all those details were taken care of with the doctor and all that. I had to keep pulling myself back and say, wait a second, this is all the busy doing. This is not the being. And this isn't, although these are needed activities, these are not things she needs. So it wasn't my job to do all those little fixy things. And it also was not necessarily my job to, if she said, well, the doctor said this, and maybe it didn't sound very positive or anxiety provoking, it was not my job to say, oh, well, I'm sure it will be fine. Let's brush it all under the carpet because I can't deal with that. Instead, I knew that my job instinctively was to hold space and say, okay, I'm hearing what you're saying, and how are you feeling about that? Which, was tough to do because as her daughter, I was feeling a lot of anxiety hearing bits of news that excuse me, that didn't sound very sure, sounded very, worrisome. But it was in holding space for her, I had to allow her room to feel what she was feeling, including, uh, if she had a bad day, if she had a negative day where she was feeling, and my mom was a very bright person, but if she had a day where she was just struggling, it was my heart's feeling to just allow that. You're having a day that you're doubting whether this treatment is working, um, whether you're improving or you want to improve, or whether maybe just the hospital food sucks and the nurses who've been caring for you are not caring for you properly. Okay, I hear you. I hear you. I'm holding space for you. And do what I could, but the key was not to try and make her feel better. She was going through a very tough time. So.
Yeah, we're so uncomfortable with that. And there's this belief that everything should be roses and sunshine, that we shouldn't have other emotions, And neither are better or worse than the other. They just are.
Yeah.
Especially in our culture too. We don't learn grieving, how to grieve properly, how to be there for someone else. And in your case, Sarah, you were also experiencing grief because you were losing your mom to cancer. And so it becomes even more difficult when you're trying to hold space for someone that you love and for your own being.
Yeah, and I think, because I've coached a lot of patients on this too, I think that our tendency, and I don't know whether it's something we sort of learn culturally, but our tendency in that situation is to put ourselves on hold. I mean, it's probably, as naturopathic doctors and myself as a shaman and RMT, these are the kinds of things we hear all the time, where clients will come to you and say, yeah, well, I've just decided it's time to take care of myself. Like I've been taking care of everyone else for 20 years, but now I really have to take care of myself. And I think, well, right, this is sort of how culturally somehow we're all trained, put ourselves on the back burner, put everyone else first. But really, I'm not sure how effectively on some days, but I tried to walk my own talk. That is, while I was caring for my mom, I tried to allow myself room to grieve. I think of it this way. One of the things I do is teach Reiki. And so sometimes new practitioners, as they're learning, they'll say, well, how do I know if what I'm feeling from the person I'm working on is like their thing or my thing? Like if I feel some big emotion come up, and I say, well, imagine before you start that you have a bookshelf beside you, and you open up your suitcase, which is your stuff. You open up your suitcase and you go, oh, okay, yeah, this is my stuff. This is where I'm at today. This is where I was at this morning. Okay, I got a little bit of grief there, and I packed up a little bit of frustration about this thing that I haven't solved yet, and I'm a little bit anxious about that thing. Okay, so those are my things. You look in your suitcase, you close it, and you put it on the shelf beside you. And I'm going to say it's different than compartmentalizing in a way where we shove it away and we don't pay any attention to it. I actually consciously, before I start my treatment day, look in my bag of tricks and say, what the heck is going on with me today? Right, there's this and there's this and there's this. And I allow myself to actually feel them in my body. Where do I feel it? Is it a tension? Is it a tightness? Is it a fluttering? Is it a heaviness somewhere? Really check in with what all those things are. Then when I put them on the shelf, I don't put them away where I say, okay, I'm not going to pay any attention to that now. It's all about the patient. I actually keep about 5% or maybe 7% of my awareness stays on the stuff that's in my bag. So that I go, oh, yeah, that's that stuff. That's my stuff. That's not their stuff. And so what if while I'm coaching a client, and I had it happen many times, I didn't have my own children. I went through a period of time where I had a lot of grief about that. And didn't I, for about 2 years, have something like 5 clients who came to me who were struggling because for various reasons they didn't have their own children, and suffering and crying and grieving, and I'm thinking, how am I going to handle this? And it's because I was holding space for my own grief too, because we have the capacity to do that, right? I just didn't like ignore that I had that. It's like, okay, that's my stuff, this is their stuff, now I'm holding space for them, you know. Yeah, I'm sure as naturopaths you've experienced that a lot.
And it almost feels even more validating when someone is sharing your grief. You know, like when you meet someone who's gone through a similar grief as your own, you feel less alone with it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, there really are probably only a few sorts of experiences that we all have in this life. And they all can be related down to those basic emotions, right? So on the challenging side, right, grief, loss, abandonment. I mean, if you kind of listed all the main things, we would all have experienced them in some way or on some level, whether it's the exact thing or not. But in recognizing our humanity helps us to heal, for sure, helps us to connect. I think about my meditation teacher, David G, says, you know, in this world, we all want attention, acceptance. Oh gosh, there's 4, and they were in my head this morning. Oh,
Purpose?
Nope, they were 4 A's.
4 A's.
That's okay.
It's
It'll
okay.
come back.
We'll come back. What do you
Wait,
think? What do you think people truly want out of life, Sarah?
Yeah. You know, I really do believe that we want to have a sense of self. And I don't mean self as in my personality self or my ego self. Because the ego self will always drive us to what's my purpose, what's the next thing, what's my legacy, what am I putting out into the world? And on one level those are all important, but I feel like the experience of self as in soul, as in the joy and bliss that comes through connecting ourselves to the universe, for lack of a better description, if that's source, if that's love, that energy vibrates and resonates above anything else. And so even in the midst of grief or sorrow, if we can return in our hearts to that energy of love, of kind of source, of light, of being, and accepting ourselves where we are, then in a way all that other stuff, you know, there can be hardship, there can be pain, there can be illness or grief, but there also can be simultaneously joy and love and light, and something that kind of makes us feel connected. And maybe that's the word, connection. You know, connection to ourselves, connection to self, connection to each other, connection to the birds and the bees.
And this idea of acceptance is key. It transmutes it almost.
Yes. Yeah, it really does. You know, we have the ability to accept ourselves and each other with such compassion and such universal love, even if we are looking at someone who maybe we don't share ideals or beliefs with, but a universal love or compassion can carry us a long way as well. Yeah, really helps to let go of other things. Yeah.
What do you think helped you the most get through that difficult time letting go of your mom?
I'm going to say the idea of remembering that the love is always there. you know, and it whether you are someone like me who I believe that, you know, we just pass through a veil into another realm where we're just not in physical form, but that the energy still exists. And then whether you believe that or not is not important. But knowing that the energy of love in our hearts, and if that's love through knowing that that love goes on, or love through, you know, for someone who's a little more practical, that it's the love in our heart is something that still can live through our memories in the physical realm. That every time I experience, and still if I experience grief, that I remember the love. Like, so for example, yesterday my husband, who's a musician, was getting ready for a gig to play at a retirement home, and so he was looking at some of the old tunes and started trying to figure out Que Sera Sera. You know, when I was just a little girl, I asked my mother, what will I be? Well, he didn't know it, but he was like, oh, do you remember this? Do you know this one? Like, how does this go? And I was in the other room, so I sang a little bit, and then I couldn't sing anymore because that actually was the song that my mother used to sing to me when I was a little girl. And I thought, my name being Sarah, I didn't know it was French. And I thought that she was like, the song was like, K, Sarah, Sarah, Sarah. I thought it was my song. And it was like, you know, for years and years, it was a bonding thing between us. We would joke about it. And so I kind of choked up, and I felt some of that grief come up, and I had to stop singing. And I was like, whoa, you know, he doesn't know that I'm in here in the kitchen grieving, but I'm grieving. And then what I had to do was give myself the time to hold that space in my heart for the grief and say, okay, it's come up, that's okay. And don't push it away, and I'll, you know, allow it to move through me. And then remember how much love you shared with your mom. Remember the love. And as I remembered the love, the grief started to pass, and I could feel more love, you know. So it's an energy that guides us, but it is that thing about, you know, walking simultaneously and holding space and acceptance for all that you are. Absolutely. Yeah.
And today we want, you know, so many want to numb these feelings, and, you know, with antidepressants and this kind of thing, but really the only way out is through it, and to accept it and see it as a gift and learn from it. And that's who we are. You know, we're multidimensional. Feelings are part of who we are.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And it is, yeah, it's definitely a difficulty of our time that people are medicating. I like to say that I'm well meditated, not medicated. And I can't imagine what my life would look like if I was not meditating every day. It's a practice that has made all the difference for me. So you definitely need sometimes we need help and support um, in order to move through emotions, in order to accept them. So talking with someone trusted, telling your story, even if you feel like, well, there isn't an answer for it, it's just my story. There's value in telling and sharing our stories with a like-minded community, or people who've experienced something similar, who can hold space for us. In the telling of the tale, Carolyn Miss often says that our biology is our biography, right? So everything that we experience is within the body. And so as we tell our story, and maybe that's multiple times as we tell our story, we heal in the telling of the story. You know, we get new insight. Energy even just moves through the telling of the story. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And through hearing the story,
And
through hearing the story. That's why support groups are so effective, because you can be in a support group and one person's speaking and everyone else is like nodding their head because they relate and they feel compassion for the story. Mm-hmm. So there's a connectedness in that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we all have stories. We all have had challenges. We all go through difficulties. It's unfortunate that our society seems to put such high emphasis on productivity and accomplishment and being bright and cheery, and it could be, and my hope is that we are moving into a time when authenticity and the ability to connect and sort of own all of our sides of self and accept ourselves will come to play, because that's obviously what is needed in order for us to accept each other on a global stage, where we have been looking at the atrocities of racism, and the heart of racism is the inability to accept. And if we look at our humanity and can accept ourselves, then we can more truly begin to accept others as well. So
yeah. This acceptance is big. I remember, I had an experience when I was very young. My mom was crying and in a lot of grief, and I went up to her and put my arms around her, and she was unable to share at that moment. She actually pushed me away. And that is a very real memory of not, someone not allowing someone else in to help relieve and share the grief. And as a result of that, I haven't trusted completely in my life that if I shared my grief completely, that they would be there for me to hold that. So what we're talking about is just so valuable. Teaching that.
absolutely, yeah, and that is a natural fear, right? We crave that acceptance, and it's important maybe to go within our hearts and realize that, even if that other person or those people, maybe they wouldn't be capable of holding space, or maybe they didn't. I reached out to them and shared, and they didn't hold space for me, and I felt, the pain of that. Then the key is to remember that no matter what, you can always hold that space in your heart for yourself. People are on this planet doing the best they can from the basis of what they know. And unfortunately, our fear of experiencing and dealing with difficult emotions is quite a large one for most people. So, you are leading the way with the big hearts that you two have, really putting yourselves out there and inviting this conversation, and not only inviting other people to converse, but speaking very honestly and openly about who you are and what your journey is. And that's incredibly healing. It really is. It takes a lot of courage to stand up in front of, a world forum and say, hey, guess what? This is what I'm going through, and I'm sharing it with you because, well, maybe it'll help. Let's get our community discussion going. It's extremely valuable. So I have so much respect for you for doing it. I really do. It's beautiful work.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for being back on our Empowered Health podcast. We really value your opinion and your experience and your big, beautiful soul.
Big, beautiful heart.
Well, that big, beautiful heart is sending your big, beautiful hearts a huge hug from here. And to everyone out there in your global community, keep reaching into that heart and know that you have room to hold all that you are, to cradle those emotions in your heart like a mama would her little baby, or like you would your little puppy or kitty. Hold all those emotions with love. When you tell them 10 times, don't do that thing or you might fall and hurt yourself, and they do it anyways, and they fall and hurt themselves, and they come running to you crying, mom, you might. And the first thing you say is not like, oh, I told you not to do that thing. The first thing you do is you pull them up in your arms and you comfort them and make sure they're okay, and hold them and say, okay, you're okay. And it isn't until later that you say, remember that thing we talked about? So our
Yeah.
natural innate tendency is to pull on that divine feminine energy and to just love with all our hearts. And that's the most important thing for us to remember.
Yeah, and just to truly be there in the moment.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Sarah, for your amazing wisdom. And how can people reach out to you? Let's talk
Sure.
about that so they can find you if they need to.
Sure. So I'm on the web, Sarah with an H, Anne without an E, and Ritchie with a T. Just to make it complicated. SarahAnnRitchie.com. But I'm also on Instagram. Also, it's like a Sarah_Ann_Ritchie, and on Facebook the same, Sarah Ann Ritchie. Yeah. They also, if they're interested, I am on Insight Timer with some free meditations. Also, Sarah Ann Ritchie, and I'm hoping to have time to create a few more of those in the coming months as we head into winter and doing more inside activities. So yeah, I welcome anyone to reach out. I do in-person healing sessions in Orangeville, Ontario, but I'm also open to doing shamanic or Reiki or intuitive coaching sessions online through Zoom. So yeah, feel free to reach out to me if you have questions or if you'd like to connect.
Perfect. And we'll include all of that in our description in case anyone forgets the T or the the spelling. That was beautiful, Sarah. And to everyone out there, don't forget, just don't give away your power to anyone else.
Just go be you.